Good morning, everyone. Welcome to King Family Farm. So it's a foggy one. Welcome to August. This is what it looks like in New Brunswick. Foggy mornings, they're cool. The humidity is high. We start running into problems with disease in our tomatoes because of the constant humidity. So I'm not going to prune my tomatoes today. Again, I don't really have time for that. I'm doing a bunch of canning. So we're going to make some zucchini relish here after I get the barn chores done. All right, so we fed everybody. It is ridiculously hot and humid out there, and it's going to get worse, and I can't believe I'm canning. But I'm going to get this done first thing in the morning before I do anything else. So today, I'm working from this book, and we're doing the Zesty zucchini relish. Now, I set this up last night because it needs to sit for overnight, 8 hours or overnight. Now, if you were gonna can all day, I would cut this stuff up first thing in the morning and then let it salt and sit there until the last job of the day, and then you could do it then. But I did a bunch of other stuff yesterday. I've got all these pickles and more pickles. So I cut this up when I did all my other stuff, and then I just let it sit until I went to bed last night, poured the salt on it, stirred it really, really well, and let it sit overnight. And then this morning, we're gonna work with it. So what you're gonna do is chop everything nice and fine, like this. See the liquid on there? That's what comes out when you salt it. So in here, we have zucchinis that you forgot, which is a really great use for them. I also use some yellow ones because I have lots and it's pretty. We have red bell peppers, green bell peppers, lots of onion, and salt. So that's what's in this right now. And you can see it's chopped nice and fine. I use a mandolin. I'm comfortable with it. If you are not comfortable with it, use a knife and cut it just, you know, relish size. So, and go from there. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put it in the sink and dump all this out into a colander and strain it all out so that and give it a quick rinse. I don't want to rinse off all the salt. I tend to like things a little on the saltier side. But if you taste it right now, it's like too salty, right? But you can tell it's gonna be good. So that's what we're gonna do, is we're gonna go to the sink and get this rinsed out. So here we are, we've got this really nice chopped mix. It's really pretty, which is kind of why I used the yellow as well. And we're just gonna dump it in this colander. Get it all in there. It's really important to make sure you use the required amount of salt. It sounds like a lot. It's really not as much as you think. Make sure you're using canning salt. You want to use salt that has no anti-caking agents in it. I use pure sea salt because that's what I have available, but canning salt won't have the anti-caking agents in it. And make sure you use coarse salt, because if you use fine salt, you're going to end up with way more salt than is necessary. So now we're just going to give this a quick little rinse like that. And I'm going to call that good. So now we'll let that drain and we'll set up our brine in our canning pot while this continues to drain, because we're going to have the brine that goes in this. We need to allow it to come to a boil before we add this. All right, so the next thing is we are going to get our canner running. This is just a water bath project. It is a relish. It has lots of salt in it. It has actually equal amounts of salt and sugar. So canner is running. I've put the appropriate amount of water in underneath to water bath, and I've put in some cream of tartar. You can use vinegar. Cream of tartar does the same thing. It prevents that white cloudiness from showing up in your jars. We live in the country on well water. It's hard. You get sediment on your jars. So we've done that. I've got my big stock pot. Make sure you use a pot bigger than you think you need, or you're going to run out of room. So now we're going to start with the brine. Now this recipe says to put everything together in a pot. I like to mix my brine first, bring it to a boil to get that sugar dissolved before I add my zucchini, because I don't want it to really get a chance to cook too much, because I don't like soggy relish. All right, so we need 2.5 cups of white vinegar and 2.5 cups of white sugar. Now, if you wanted to soften this up a bit, you could do cider vinegar. That's absolutely an option, but I like to go with this particular recipe, 2.5 cups. All right, white vinegar. Make sure your vinegars are 5%. There's a lot of controversy right now about, you know, for the first time ever, we can get 4% on the shelves. Not true. You've always been able to get it. You do not need to use vinegar that says canning vinegar, which is ridiculously expensive. It's like 7%, but I find it a little bit too harsh. What you're looking for is right here. It says 5% acetic acid. This is no name. I'm in Canada, so Superstore brand is the cheapest one out there. And quite frankly, white vinegar is white vinegar. So 2.5 cups of white vinegar. All right. 2.5 cups of white sugar. I keep my white sugar in a 5-gallon pail because I use a lot of it. All right. 1, 2, and a half. And these they're food grade plastic because they have the recycling symbol with the 5 in it. And they're what I use. I bought them from Home Hardware, and then I buy Gamma lids from Amazon. I'll put that down in the show notes. So if you want some Gamma lids for your 5-gallon pails, these are the greatest thing ever because they twist off like that. And I really struggle to open the other pails with my hands after I got MS. Next thing, tablespoon of ground nutmeg. What we're gonna do is, I buy nutmeg whole most of the time. I don't usually have ground nutmeg. This nutmeg, I bought this down in Fredericton. This, you can hear inside is the actual nut is in there. So I have to bust it open to get the nut out. Shot that everywhere. That's what the nutmeg looks like on the inside. So you can see the difference. And then around this is really cool. See the lines on this? This is where mace comes from. And whole mace, if I can find it, I have a jar of it. So mace, which is what comes off of this, has a much pepperier flavor. And this is what it looks like when it hasn't been pre-ground. And you can see like it matches what goes around this. So when they harvest this, they peel off the big outer shell, and then they take this, and this is mace, and it's sold as one item, and then this is nutmeg, and the actual nut is inside that, and that's, try and get that to focus, there it is, and that's the actual nutmeg. And this smell can't be beat. This is so much nicer. If you can get whole nutmeg, just get it. So here's the shell I busted off right here. So it's not much. I just hit it with a mallet and away we go. So now, rasp nutmeg. I'm going to grind what I need. So that's what it looks like on the inside after you grate it. That's what it looks like. And it's really like light and fluffy. And when I measure my tablespoon, I'm not going to pack this in. This is much stronger than the ground nutmeg that you're used to buying. So we're just going to tablespoon of nutmeg. I know, it's a lot of work to get nutmeg, but it's worth it. All right, and a tablespoon of ground turmeric, which is this bright yellow. add that in. I'm going to turn my stove on. 4 tablespoons of prepared horseradish, which will give it some bite. This you find in the deli case at the grocery store. You do not want to buy like horseradish cream. It should look like that. One. Two. It's the same horseradish mix that I use in my Bloody Mary mix when I make that. Alright, 4 of those. Now this calls for a chili pepper, chopped with seeds. I'm not going to add that because that would be too much for most of my family. So if they want hot sauce on their stuff, they can add that separately. Now this also calls for pickle crisp, which I don't use. I just don't overcook my stuff. That's why I bring this to a boil and then add everything. And then we're just going to bring it to a simmer. I like my relish to not be watery. So I mix up a little bit of clear gel, which is a modified cornstarch. You can buy it online. And I mix it with my vinegar. Instead of, and usually I pull vinegar from that. Just like regular cornstarch, you want to make sure that you're mixing it with cold. We're going to use a 1/4 cup. And I don't know, 4 tablespoons, something like that. I just make kind of a paste that I can drizzle into it while it's boiling, and I stir it and it thickens to where I like it, and then we go from there. So this recipe says that it makes 5 pints, and I am going to can this in 1/2 pints, and I'm going to add just a splash more vinegar to that. Cornstarch is like weirdly gloopy in like this solid mass when you're mixing it. That's almost to a boil. So this says that it makes 5 pints, so I'm going to get out 10 1/2 pints that I pre-washed. Okay, so you're going to need a couple of items. You need a jar lifter, something to get your jars in and out of that hot water. A funnel, so you're not slopping your stuff all over the place. A ladle to get it into the jars. And then I just tap them lightly to get the air bubbles out, because I don't find there's a ridiculous amount of air bubbles in this. It depends how thick you make it. Alright, so this has come to a boil. We've got our drained zucchini and onion pepper mixture. There we go. And we're going to give this a stir. And this is going to look so pretty. So this is kind of what it looks like. The turmeric makes it extra yellow. But it's really pretty. And you can see it's a little soupy, right? So we're going to wait for it to come back to a boil. And then we're going to add the cornstarch to just thicken it up just a touch. And that way, I'm not boiling the life out of it and making my relish all soft and kind of gross. So this is really coming to a boil. It's almost there. Once it boils, we'll start adding the cornstarch. And this is what the cornstarch looks like. Alright, so we're boiling enough here now that I can start just drizzling this in. You want to make sure you're stirring it, because you don't want a big clump of cornstarch right in the middle of your pot. And that might be all she needs. See how that just thickened right out? You can give a little bit more. Okay, so we're gonna give this, I'm happy with this. We're gonna give this a quick simmer just to kind of cook that cornstarch taste off. But now you can see when you pick it up, it almost kind of sheets off. It's not watery anymore, which I appreciate. I don't like watery relish. It looks nice. And it thickens just a touch when it cools. The benefit with clear gel is that it's pretty much the same temperature, same viscosity when it's hot as when it's cold. Yep. All right, we are there. This is one of those recipes, if you're new to canning, this is pretty foolproof. You can do it exactly as it says in the recipe book and it will turn out just fine. I have explained my reasoning for some of my modifications, only because I make a lot of relish. So I know what I'm used to doing. Gosh, that looks pretty. So pretty. And while you're scooping out of there, you want to make sure you give it a bit of a stir to kind of distribute everything so that you're not just picking up veg and then you have all this liquid left in the bottom. I've overfilled that jar. You want to make sure you're leaving at least a 1/4 inch of headspace. You could go as much as a half. The next thing, paper towel. We're going to wipe all these rims off, and you need to wipe them really, really well. You don't want any kind of stickiness on the rims. Otherwise they won't seal. When you were washing your jars, you should have checked all your rims to make sure that they didn't have any chips or damage to them, because that will also prevent them from sealing and could indicate a compromised jar that would blow open in your canner, which nobody wants. It's messy. So there we go. Now I keep my lids. They say you're not supposed to. I don't have as much success when I don't heat my lids. I just use this, it's a magnetic jar lifter or lid lifter to get them out of the water. They're just sitting in like hot water, not boiling, not simmering, just right on the verge of simmer. And then we've got our rings that we've already washed, and they just go on finger tight, no tighter than that. I put them on until they stop, like that, and just a little bit more. You don't want to go any further than that, because then the jar can't vent properly. So the bands are reusable. The lids, you can, lots of people do reuse them. I have had limited success reusing lids. So I tend not to. Oop. All right, so our can is ready to go. We have a rack in the bottom. I'm gonna double stack these because I have too many jars to fit in the bottom, and I can do that because I have a rack in top. So I've got 7 on the bottom, rack, 7 on top. Just like that. It's already boiling. Just like that. We'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. So now we're going to take the lid off. We're going to turn this canner off. They tell you you're supposed to wait 5 minutes before you pull the jars out. I never do. It's never been an issue. As a matter of fact, I will continue to allow my canner to boil and just do batch after batch. And that's it. And it's in there, and it's pretty. Look at that. The only thing I don't like is getting the rack out. Rack number 1, that's in the top. There's also one in the bottom that I don't pull out in between batches. But that second rack is what allows me to stack jars for water bath canning as well as pressure canning. So now we have 14 jars of zucchini relish, and that is what you can do with all of that extra zucchini coming out of your garden this time of year. So I hope you enjoy that recipe. I hope you give it a try. Thanks for joining us today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. We'll see you here next time on the farm.